Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am your host, Shaw Hayes, and welcome to our show, Inspire. To the left or right of me, whichever way you're looking, or if you're listening to us from wherever you are, we have Kiana here, who is our founder and producer of Inspire. Today, we are so happy to have here with us a personal friend and of both of ours, someone who knows us well, but has a journey that can inspire anyone. She left corporate America to start and fill out her dreams of becoming a chef and real estate agent. And we want to delve more into all of that while I put my phone on silent about her life and her journey and where she is now. Without further ado, my best friend, welcome Chef Jamie G.
Hi, y'all.
I thought you need a Sweetie and Doja Cat song come on. That's my best friend. But they would have shut us down though.
Definitely.
Playing in the background. Look, it's so sad. I'm talking about literally, I think I've seen you in 10 months at least.
Hello.
At least 10 months. But
wait, we have to say though, those glasses are fabulous.
Ooh, thank you.
I love the chain. You definitely won't lose them for sure.
Hello.
And I see your shirt on. Tell everybody about your shirt.
Yeah, so this is my shirt, which I produce, which you can purchase at J Fire & Co. It's called Minding. It says Minding My Black Owned Business.
Yes.
And it's black on black. And from what I understand, there's several others who have recreated or created this shirt as well. Mine's is significantly different because it's only black on black. So it's not 100 different colors. It's black on black. And it's Minding My Black Owned Business. It's in black because if you were minding your business, you probably wouldn't read it. And it's black on black because my mind is on my black business. So.
I love it.
That's right.
That's such a great tagline.
And tell people where to get that shirt from.
They can get it from jfireandco.com. And they can also follow me. I'm at Chef Jamie. Jamie Gasson on Facebook. Any of those places. You can also get it from the National Harbor at the Cheesecake Ladies shop, which is also another Black-owned business.
Good.
Yes.
That is great. Well, you got merch on sale. That's awesome. So,
hey,
well, let's dig deeper into Chef Jamie G, and also real estate agent, and find out your story so we can get everyone else up to speed about who you are and what you're doing.
I'm sorry, real quick. Quick because I said the Cheesecake Lady, and I want to be clear. It's called the Furlough Cheesecake. They were on Oprah. They're a pretty big deal, but they are really? Furlough Cheesecake. So They were ladies who created a business during furlough when everyone was furloughed and they were losing money. They created this cheesecake business, and they now have a shop open at the National Harbor. So I want to be clear about that because I want people to follow them too and follow their story. But they were on Oprah. And it was such a big deal. But it's called Furlough Cheesecakes. Okay. Well, so I call them Cheesecake Ladies, but I want to be specific to honor them.
Look, and Key's on it. See, she got it right down to the bottom for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about, as I've said, I know somewhat of your journey, but I want our audience to kind of get an understanding of you and where you started. As a child growing up, had you always thought about being a chef?
So I think as a child, the biggest thing is I just was bossy, right? So I had to be in charge of something because I was going to get fired from wherever I was. But all jokes aside, I always cooked everything, as you know, because go best friend, when we were, 18, 17, whatever, I was cooking stuff for something to do. So I was always cooking forever, like since I was 9. And my dad was always like, so when we had snow days, I would play this game where whatever we had in the house, everybody used to run out to the store and buy all this stuff when it was going to be a snow day. But my dad would always be like, they're just doing that to make you go to the store and buy a bunch of stuff. And so he was not one of those people that would go out and buy a billion things just because it was supposed to snow. And if people are familiar with the DMV, it could be supposed to snow, but it might don't do nothing.
Right.
And so you bought everything. And then the times when you buy nothing is when it's like a blizzard. So that being said, he was not one of these people that rushed out to go and, buy everything just because it was supposed to snow. So we would have sometimes when it really snowed, not much in the house. So one of the games I would play is like, I'm going to make dinner with whatever we have in here. So I would take all these different things that didn't seem like they went together and make stuff out of it. So I would say, like, if there was a birthplace, that was probably it.
But when you start out thinking about that path or just having that experience with your father, you didn't decide to go right into becoming a chef. You started out into the corporate world. So how was the transition getting into first being in a corporate world and then deciding to make a leap into becoming a chef?
So I think something that's real important that I try to especially talk to young women about, or, it's not just young women, but honestly, women of all ages that are in necessarily jobs they don't love or whatever. A lot of that comes from, as Black people, for sure, we grew up in a way where we were taught, like, get a job, get a house. It was go to college, get a job, get a house, get a husband, get a house, or whatever that, and so the timeline for us as a culture looked like that because that was what was seen as success. Mm-hmm. And so jobs like being a chef or being an entrepreneur, they weren't really, like nowadays, people consider that to be cool. But back then that wasn't cool because it was too risky. So if you said you wanted to be a chef, or you said you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or you wanted to own a store, people would look at you, and especially your parents in most cases would look at you like you were a fool. Like basically like, oh, you don't want to do nothing with your life, because that's how they were raised and taught. And so, I remember having a very poignant conversation with my mom, and she and I had talked about it afterwards, where she said to me, like, well, if you don't want to do nothing, you could just go be a what did she say? Huh? A lady of the night. No, that's what you say to my daughter. But she said you can just go and do hair or something. Like, whatever their idea of you doing something that was outside of the norm was very dismissive. And it wasn't like you can create an empire doing that. Yeah. And so I remember like thinking like, well, that would be cool. But I was like, but I guess not because, whatever. So it was like, I always had a creative spirit and I always wanted to do something like that. But it didn't seem like it was in the cards because it didn't seem tangible. It didn't seem like I was going to be able to get the rest of the things that meant that you had a great life. You know what I mean? So it was like, okay, so if you didn't go to college and you decide to be this entrepreneur, then now you're going to miss the husband, the house, the this, the that, and the degree, the husband, the house, and so I didn't immediately. I chose the path that everyone chose. And I went to college and I do not regret that because I went to Morgan State, the greatest. Okay. And got one of the best educations with people who loved me and developed some of the greatest friendships and some of the greatest alliances I've had in my life. So I don't regret that, but I went to college, and when I left college, I moved, I went to work, and I worked for what I like to call now in interviews a national security organization, because I don't want to slander them in public, that I did not like. I hated it. I went to work crying. I was sad every day. I didn't like what they did. I didn't feel like they stood for anything really. I didn't feel like they had the same, goals in common as me. All of those things. I felt completely conflicted in my spirit. I had a catering company, but I did it on the side. And I didn't feel like, honestly, that money was ever going to compare to the money that I was bringing in from corporate America. I felt like that corporate figure was here and this figure was here, not knowing that this figure could be up there if I gave it the same amount of time.
But what do you say for people in terms of that thinking process and that moment of debating between keeping the job and still making the side thing? Like, how do you decide for yourself a leap is okay versus let me stay here and hold on to the stable check in addition to trying to follow my dreams?
I would say the only thing I would say a couple things about that. I would say that, I feel it unfair for some entrepreneurs to look upon that as wrong. Some people are like, well, you ain't gonna never get there. I don't think that's fair, because some people do feel like they have obligations. But one of the things that became very apparent to me, and Facebook is very famous for this, these Facebook memories. When I go back and I look at the words that I began to say and the way my thinking changed, and the time that my thinking changed between when I actually made the leap, it was like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that to say it's not an immediate thing. It takes time for you to get comfortable with the idea that things may be uncomfortable for a while, that you could lose a few things. Now, in my case, I didn't lose anything. I'm still fat, so I didn't lose no meal. I had this house, which I bought during COVID. Like, I ain't miss no meal. I ain't miss nothing. So, and I don't think you will either, but it takes time to get comfortable with the fact that, if that happens, it's okay, because it would only be temporarily. And if you think about yourself here at this, whatever people perceive as to be this normal lifestyle, and then you quit and you go down here for a bit, but then when you rise up, you're way beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth that dip. It's like the stock market. You put your money in, it dips a little bit, but it's that dip that really gives you that boost.
Especially investing in yourself.
Yeah. So when you begin to think of it differently, you have to really change your thinking about how you perceive money, about how you use it, about what you think about it before you can really step out. And so I don't fault people who don't step out immediately or anything like that, but it takes a lot of balls to do. I mean, I tell people all the time, I broke out for 3 straight months in hives, because while I had the nerve to do it, I still was very nervous that I did it. And I'm like, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to do this? I wasn't sleeping. I was nervous, but I had to get in a space where I had to keep saying, God will make room for me.
Mm-hmm.
God will make room for me, because I also had to get out of the mindset that a job is the only thing that can bring me prosperity. Because the truth is, it may bring you function, but it rarely ever brings you prosperity. And so I had to get out of that thinking too. So it was like, okay, so I could get furloughed tomorrow.
Yeah.
This place that I work for could burn down.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these things could happen. And would I have this same level of anxiety just because it wasn't me that took the step?
Yeah. So what do you, in terms of like the steps you took? So you said there was a 4-year time before you decided to take the leap. What did you do in the process of preparing yourself to decide to do that?
So, you'll hear a lot of people say, you should have 6 months worth of rent, or, whatever your bills are. And I think that's very valuable. I think that's very true. And I think you should have that whether you quit your job or not.
Yeah.
But I do think that is one important step that people should do for life in general.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you decide to lose your job, because there is a dip, you know what I mean? Or I should say, it's what will seem like a dip, because the truth is it isn't really a dip, but it feels like a dip because now when Friday hit, that paycheck don't hit the same. So now you feel dippish, but you're really not. It's not a dip, because what will happen is the next Friday, you'll have a client that has made up for those 2 months. You know what I mean? So I would say definitely get you a kitty so you feel more comfortable. And honestly, that kitty is more for your peace of mind than it has anything to do with the outcome of your life. Yeah. And that's for real. It has to just do with your peace of mind so you can focus on the things you need to focus on, and you don't have to be. Because one of the biggest things about entrepreneurship, and I'm a caterer, but I'm also a real estate agent, and that's a very flighty business. That had stopped dead in its tracks at the beginning of COVID, but now it's popping like whatever, like it always has. And so, that being said, it's important for you to have a kitty for your mindset so that you don't chase money. You don't want to take anything that anybody throws at you, especially if you're an entrepreneur of a product. Like, if you're a caterer, or if you make bath salts or earrings or whatever it is that you do, you will be much more at risk to accept any penny someone will throw at you if you don't have a safety net to feel like you can handle yourself for a while. So it's easy to devalue yourself in that waiting period.
Yeah. And so
if you set that bar, you could get stuck in that space.
Yeah, and you made reference to the real estate portion of your career. How did you create that to go hand in hand, or you make a separation from it, or is it a great way to piggyback off of, relationships you get from catering and vice versa as far as being a real estate agent?
You know what? It's funny you say that because I have tried for years to kind of marry them.
Mm.
And it hasn't happened like I thought. Like I did think, okay, well, I sell real estate and then I'll tell them I'm a caterer. But I can, or vice versa, I'll tell my catering clients that I sell real estate. And it's kind of hard in general for people to see you outside of the way they see you.
Mm.
And so it really doesn't marry in the same way that I thought it would. The best thing that it has done for me is, when I sell a house, I tell them, oh, I'll do your housewarming. And so, that's cool to do. But they don't really marry with each other. The only thing that makes them similar is how I serve people, just serving the community and serving people. I serve in the same way, handle them with care and things like that. But they don't really marry that well together. It's just about balance, I think, more than anything else.
Well, that's a good point to make as far as people not seeing you in the light when you're stepping into the real estate shoes, and when you're in chef world, it's different for them. So how much does marketing play into being able to promote yourself so that people, if they are clienting you from maybe, for instance, selling a house, they may see a page or something. How do you manage that to make sure that that kind of is more visible for people?
So, I think it's different for different things, right? So I think that, if I was talking to someone who had a business, who had two separate businesses, like mine are very separate, the different platforms ring differently, right? Mm-hmm. So Instagram is really a place for you to share stories. That in mind, the way you keep people's attention is sharing the stories they came to you for, right? So as Chef Jamie, people come to me for food. When they get to my page, they want to scroll through and get ideas about food. They don't want to pass real estate stuff. Mm. So they can easily get distracted because once they get to the real estate stuff, now they're like, oh, okay, her page is about something different. And it kind of moves them. So oftentimes what I'll do is I will do a post about food, but it may be about a kitchen. And I may say, check out this page in the caption to draw them to the real estate page. When somebody's going through my real estate page, they want to know about houses or home decor. And if I start posting too much food there, so I say that to say, like, the different platforms are different, right? So on Instagram, it's photo driven. That's why people go to your page. They want to be inspired for the photos of the thing they're going for. On Facebook, people want to know about your lifestyle. They want to be connected with you. That's more of a space where you can share both things because they're not coming there to have a story told in pictures. They're coming there to learn about you. So you can be a chef and a real estate agent all right there at the same time. Mm-hmm. Right. You have to be creative. So like there at the same time, you can share all of that because it's a community more on Facebook. Instagram is more of a portrait gallery interacting. Right. Facebook is more of a community. And so you use all of these platforms to integrate each other. And I do mention them and talk about them all on both pages. Mm-hmm. And so I'll see people follow me. Like right now, we're on my Jamie Gasson page and I shared it there and people will be watching it, but I'm talking about real estate and then, hey, Sakina, and then they'll say, oh, let me go over and look at this page of hers. And so, you have to constantly promote, but you also have to be smart in terms of business on realizing what people came there for and giving them that as well.
So with you wearing both of these hats, what does a typical day look like for you?
So, all right, let me, as I get my cocktail. These days, the typical, thank you about my glasses, girl, Julie. To say the word typical in my day is probably not really, it's an oxymoron. But to say, let's use this week, for example. So I'm a private chef to one of my lovely clients who is now my friend. And she has, look, now I'm plugging everybody's business. But
That's all right. That's especially if it's black owned. Do it.
listen, it is black owned, and look, I'm old, so I'm looking it up because I want to make sure that I say the right name of her company before I go out here saying the wrong thing like I did before. But she has a pressed juice company. Her and her husband. They also own an internet firm. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Wow.
Yeah. But I work for them in their home as their private chef. So I do that 3 days a week. And as I do that.
So while you're looking her up, how did you cultivate that relationship? Like, was it an ad or was it a friend referral?
No, well, so Instagram. She found me on Instagram through another person's page, and she found me on Instagram through another person's page. Reached out to me. She used to live in Pennsylvania, and she asked me if I would drive from here or fly from here to Pennsylvania, where she lives, and serve her and her girlfriends for a private event. And
Wow.
I did. I went there, and actually, she and I had the joke the other day when I was at her home that her two smallest children weren't living when we met. So,
wow.
Yeah, like I'm their auntie, like because I've been in their life that long. So I've been her private chef since then. And then she called me one day and said, "You'll never believe this." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "I'm moving to Maryland." And I'm like, "What?" So she's like, "Well, now I need you in my house all the time," because her son was like, "Can she cook for us all the time?"
Oh, that's awesome. That's a good testimony of a child.
Right. Yeah. So that's how that relationship happened. So I go to her house 3 days a week. So in the morning I wake up, I get online, I do, I'll say this as an entrepreneur, something that entrepreneurs need to know, especially or only if you want to grow your social media business or if you make revenue through social media. Make a schedule to post, make a schedule of content and make a schedule to post. So I wake up in the morning, I do my content, or schedule my content, I post those things. Then I go to her home. I cook their some lunch and their dinner. Then I leave there. I go show homes or I write contracts or whatever that is. I come home and write contracts. So sometimes I write them in the morning or do a home inspection or I do a cooking consultation or I leave her home from cooking dinner and I go do a private dinner. And then I show homes on the next morning before I go to her house. So that's why I say a typical day is relative because I also do cooking classes. So sometimes I leave her house, come here, do a cooking class, and then show houses later.
But how do you create a balance for your life though with all of that going on?
What's balance? If I'm being completely honest, I don't know that I have mastered that, but I'll say this. One of our very good girlfriends, Mary, said to me that balance is perpetual. And so, because I was speaking about how I'm not really sure. Sometimes I feel like I got in the groove and other times I don't. And she was saying, as your business changes, the way you balance changes. Mm-hmm. And we don't always shift for our changes. So we think this is our schedule and that's what we keep doing, even though things may be changing, but we feel out of whack. And that was something that really rung to me because I don't think I've been conscious of doing that as often as I should. Mm. But, sometimes I have great balance, other times I don't. But I also don't feel forced to have balance. Like I also feel like I want to give myself grace when I'm out of balance. Mm. Like I don't want to be so mad at myself for not having the perfect balance or understanding how to juggle all the time. I want to say sometimes, well, yeah, it's out of whack right now, and maybe we need a break. And then you come back and you get back in balance.
So what has been one of the challenges in both being a chef and real estate agent that you often have to deal with and kind of feel like navigate around?
The biggest challenges for me because both of my industries are so customer service driven,
Mhm.
it's just learning how to deal with everyone's different personalities. And I would say, I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you master relationships, you can master business.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I tell people all the time, like, you've got to get into, like, one of the best books I ever read in real estate was about understanding personalities and
Mhm.
personality types. And a lot of real estate companies make you take a personality test when you start to figure out if you should be a seller's agent or a buyer's agent and stuff like that. But those skills are so valuable because every business is about relationships. Every
Mhm.
business is about how well you know how to interact with personalities that could be very different than yours, or maybe are too similar, because you know that can be a clash too.
Yeah.
And I ask people all the time, well, when is your birthday? Well, what do you like to do? And I get to those points because it lets me know, like, do I need to come in more softly? Can I come to you? You know, I'm more of a raw person, like a get to the point. But some people can't take a get to the point.
Yeah. You know,
Some people
massaging.
don't want to get to the point because it feels abrupt to them.
Mhm.
So you know, so you have to
Well, let's call to the moment. Is Ethan doing something? We're just only in an interview. It's fine.
you want to do a whole full
I had to
on.
step in 'cause I'm laughing.
First of all, who is all this in the background anyway? Did I see Asia too?
I had to jump in for that moment. I'm in the back laughing.
Like, what in the
I'm gonna need you
So
to do like a
anyway,
limbo line and
look, and speaking of balance, look, as we speak of balance,
and then I see all this in my shoulder like
yeah,
Asia.
man, bye.
Send it
So
to me. Send it
the
to me.
point, speaking of balance, look, as we speak of balance,
Anyway,
the moral of the story is that, you know, it's hard to balance everything, and it's hard to not have your husband get ice while you're in an interview live that people are watching.
but and then I mean, I guess since now that he has equated himself into this interview in some kind of way, and you know, you guys both have those entrepreneurial, like some people have the foundation of somebody else being in the background doing this, and that, so they
Yeah.
can be able to go and sustain it. How is that balancing that out, having both, you know, both of you all being entrepreneurs?
You know, it's crazy, and you know, COVID has really, I guess it's hard to say because it felt different before COVID, you know, balancing those relationships and businesses and those sorts of things. After COVID is much different because all of our businesses fluctuated and things changed, and you know, all of that stuff like that. Hey y'all, Sharon, Jackie.
Jackie, gotta get you on here. Yeah.
Yes. You know, it's so different trying to fluctuate those things and do those things. And now that we're having these businesses right in the same house, you know what I'm saying? Where here I am conducting business, having a whole live discussion, and here he is getting ice right in the back because his day is over. So he's
Yeah.
having so he is having so he's having a time to wind down.
Were you in a different space? And that has to be a lot in terms of just being able to manage that, because if you're, especially when you're dealing with like catering and cooking and stuff like that, you're, you know, out, you know, and your day can be from like, especially if you're talking about the prep time up to the cooking time, up to the delivery time. And the time you get home, you got to be worn out. How do you make space for yourself, let alone having a spouse to be able to give that to as well?
I don't, if I'm being completely honest, I don't know that I have the answer to that.
Mm.
And I don't know that I've always done it. Sometimes I'm really great at it and we make time for each other. And sometimes we go, you know, on vacations and, hey, Jackie, look. Now, what did I say? We talked about this t-shirt, right? We said go to J Fire and Co. And
First of all,
Jackie,
you're not going to keep shaking and shimmering on here. This is a family
hey,
show.
J Fire, Kiana, put that up, jfireandco.com. And we're also gonna have some new items coming out of jfireandco.com in St. Charles Mall. Kiana, look. So
We would get Jay Feinco on the show so she could promote herself. But in the meantime, we're talking about Chef Jamie G.
I know, but I just wanted to make sure we had it out there because people can go buy these shirts with it, and we're
Yes,
gonna have.
we are going to get Jack on the show for sure.
So anyway, I don't know. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes I'm great at it, and we make time for each other, and we take vacations. Obviously, during COVID, that had we haven't been able to do that as much, and we just in here sick of each other a lot. But, if I'm being honest, but. But then other times we're super busy and we lay in the bed at night and we're like, oh, hey, good night, because we both so tired. So it's really goes back to how that balance fluctuates. Sometimes it's perfect, sometimes it's hard as hell, and that's just what it is. But you have to make a concerted effort to say, all right, once a week we're going to do this. Sometimes if we're both home early before 5 or 6, we'll say, come on, let's watch some TV together, and that's not that exciting, but at least we're sitting together in the same room, not sitting on our computer or, doing something else besides sitting together and sharing our day, or whatever.
So what is something that you have learned about yourself throughout all of this?
COVID or entrepreneurship?
Being an entrepreneur and like coming into your own space and being your own boss.
Oh, I learned that, that I'm a tough boss and a tough employee. I know for sure that when I look back on like other bosses that I have had and they're like, you need to be doing this. I am that boss like that I probably am irritated by. And
like our parents, like everything we didn't want to be, we become.
Right. I'm very, I understand more how when you love something so much, you want it to be perfect and you want the people who are operating and doing it to be, much more to care about it as much as you do. You know what I mean? Like I can respect that and understand it way more.
So between both of your real estate and chef, what would you think of some of the tools people needed to have to be successful in both businesses?
I think you just have to, one of the things that I talked to Sylvia about earlier, I was on her show at 11 and we talked about businesses that, we just have to really educate ourselves. And I was kind of saying to her, like when COVID and stuff happened, one of the biggest issues was that I was a sole proprietor and I didn't know then the value of building this LLC or how important it was. Thank you, Kathy. I didn't realize how important it was to have systems in place because when they were giving out these PPP loans and you had a sole proprietorship, you could not get it because you didn't have employees. So when they were first set up, now they're starting to think about sole proprietors because enough people spoke up and weren't able to get the loans. But in the beginning, if you didn't have employees, you couldn't get the help.
Yeah.
So because of that, most of us were sole proprietors because we didn't know no better and we filed ourselves and we didn't have a lawyer and all those things. And so when they were giving out all this money, we couldn't get it because sole proprietors weren't in there because we didn't have any employees to sustain.
Yeah.
And so it's really just about educating yourself and talking to other business owners and talking to professionals like lawyers or accountants or tax, people who are tax professionals, insurance professionals to really educate you and tell you what things you need to set your business up in the right way. Because although we get excited about moving forward because we have this great idea, it's that foundation that really sustains you when it comes to situations that hit the fan like right now.
Yeah. So when you think about that in terms of having the thing that you know now, a lot of reason why people say in terms of Black business, the support or not supporting is because some people feel like the mom and pop shop thing is around them. They don't really think that they have the structure to become like this big conglomerate. What do you think in terms of, I guess, the misconceptions about being a small business owner, especially a Black small business owner, that oftentimes people going into this trying to be a business owner have, especially not being educated about certain things?
When you explain, because I don't want to answer the wrong question. What are the misconceptions that you think society has, or a person
in terms of as a business owner, when you're going into this, like you were saying, you're having the education about certain things you didn't know at first. Like, what do you think that when you coming into this business as a small business owner that you didn't have, and knowledge wise that you now saying before you didn't have?
I think it's just, I think ask the question. Like, I think a lot of us, when we start a business, we don't want to look like the newbie. We don't want to look like we don't know what's going on. And we want to look like we've been out here and we know what's happening because we don't want people to, I guess, berate us or look at us differently.
Mm-hmm.
Say you're the newbie. Ask the question. Say, I want to start a t-shirt line, but I've never done it before. Ask someone else who's seasoned in the business. Like, hey, yeah, I am just starting out. It's nothing wrong with that. I ask someone who you admire. And let me be honest. When I first started, I talked to other chefs and some of them shaded me. I'm not going to tell you I did it for myself. You want to do it for yourself. And you're going to run into people like that. But those people aren't the people. They aren't your people. So fine, brush that off and connect with someone else. People inbox me all the time who want to be chefs, and I give them all the information. And they're like, oh, I asked someone else and they wouldn't give it to me. And that's the thing. And that's fine. Mm-hmm. Don't stress over that. But put your pride aside, ask the questions, partner with someone who knows, and let them feed you. Like, surround yourself with people who are the next level from you, because that's how you get to the next level. Yeah. Not by being surrounded by a bunch of people you're constantly teaching. Figure out who can help you. Figure out who knows. Figure out who's where you want to be. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how you keep growing. And if you look like the newbie, be the newbie. And if you ain't in the newbie in your circle, then keep getting to the next circle. Because that's what's going to grow you.
And how do you become the professional if you didn't become if you weren't new at first? At some point, you had to be the person just starting out.
And once you get to that highest level in that group you're in, you're going to be the newbie in the next group. Yeah. And that's fine. If I'm the newbie in Steve Jobs' group, yes. Who mad at that? You know what I mean? Like, you just keep being a newbie. Yeah. And that's how you keep growing.
You get into that new space. So what do you have as far as your goals of what do you want to do with both of your businesses? What are like your long-term goals?
Oh, yeah. So it's funny. I'm saying that because, this is a question I've asked myself so many times, and I feel like it constantly changes. Like, years ago, I got into the industry, culinary industry, and I wanted to own a restaurant. Mm-hmm. I open a restaurant now. You know what I mean? Like, so it's
did COVID shift that for you, or you just
being executive chef working for 50 and 60 hours changed that. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes what you set out thinking is beautiful in your mind, you get into it and you realize this isn't the best fit for me. And it may be in the same industry, but you may just shift it a little bit. And so I still want to be in the culinary industry. I want to write, I'm working on writing a cookbook and those sorts of things. But I realized that as much as I love the restaurant industry, I don't want to be anywhere for 100 hours a day. That doesn't satisfy my life or my family or my freedom. Like, I don't want to leave corporate America and put myself in my own jail.
Yeah.
So it changed my thoughts.
Well, speak to that, especially for a youth who may watch this on Facebook at some point in their lives, about being a chef for yourself in terms of, or a chef owner versus the one who may work in a restaurant. Like, where's the difference in terms of that?
It wasn't until I actually became a chef that I realized there's 750 different ways you can be a chef. Mm-hmm. You can be a food stylist. You can be a food stylist. You can be a personal chef who just only works in people's homes. You could be a caterer who only caters to large events. You could be a private chef that only does small events. You could just write cookbooks and just pictures and just be on social media and not ever interact with other people. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing, the list of things, but the only way you know that is to get out there, start doing things, start, seeing how you fit, and then adjust, recalibrate. You do it and you recalibrate. You do it and you recalibrate. And that's the biggest thing I can say to people is be fluid, be flexible. When it comes to your own business, if there's nothing else you learn from COVID, know that you could do your business in a different way and still make the same amount of money or even more. Just learn how to pivot. Mm-hmm. I mean, I couldn't, if I was a restaurant owner, think about it. But for sorry, y'all.
Tell them this is going to be on CBS next week.
I mean, hello. If I was a restaurant owner, before COVID, I wouldn't be a restaurant owner most likely right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So being able to pivot and say, how can I still do what I love in a way that makes sense for me, for my family, for the conditions of the world in the same way?
So let's
And
get back to the goals then. So you said not restaurant owner. And that was at one point on the list. So where are you now with your goals?
so now I just want to write a bunch of different books. I want a whole bunch of different people to interview me. I want to travel around the world making good food. You know, if Oprah calls me, I'll work for her in any rubber, strawberry giver, whatever. But you know, more than anything, I just want to write my cookbooks. I want to educate children. I want to teach people about good food and how to grow good food. I'm gonna have my garden here shortly. I'll be documenting that and posting that and sharing those stories. And so I just want to teach people how to live well, how to eat well, how important food is, how to teach their children about more than McDonald's when they're babies. And
Child.
things like that's my mission.
And for real estate, what is it for you that you ultimately
Oh,
want
in
to do?
real estate, I'm going to own all the real estate I can, and I'm going to leave the biggest amount of money in legacy and own all the property back because the biggest issue with gentrification and all of this stuff that's going on and all of this anger we have is us giving up our land. We don't own enough land. And so my mission is to buy as much of the block as we can, period.
Mm-hmm. And that's
And
true.
help others that look like us buy as much of the block as we can.
And that's the most important thing because people don't think about the fact that when you are being pushed out, like you buy the property, you can be a part of the
Or you
gentrification.
could have never given it up. But if you're in a position where you're strained, where again, you don't know, like even having, you know, a lot of us don't know that if you have a garden on your land, then you get money back instead of
Yeah.
owing money, your taxes. But again, if you're in a situation in the inner city where you're strapped for cash or you don't, you know, you owe all these taxes on your land, you don't know you can have a garden and get some of that money back. So you give it up to any old body who bang on your door, who offer you a nice check. And now here they done sold it for triple what you could have sold it to them for. So it's about the education. So that's why I'm in real estate, teach you that, to teach my people that, to help us understand that.
And that's a big thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of real estate part of it. A lot of people, I remember growing up and one of my aunts saying, I would never buy a house. I don't want to be dealing with all of that.
Yeah.
That thought process behind not owning your own because you don't want the responsibility. What do you say to people who have the fear about even thinking about buying?
So now, you know, I would challenge that thought because I don't think everybody needs to be a homeowner. I don't think everybody should have the responsibility if they don't want it. I don't think that you have to be. I think that if you want to be, you should be. I think that if you're sitting on some property that's worth more money than what somebody's offering you, you should not give it up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can invest in property and not make it your responsibility on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair. You know what I mean? So I don't think that every person should be a homeowner if they don't want to. I do think you should have property. I do think you should invest in property. It can be a rental or anything. I do think that a vast majority of the millionaires made money in real estate, and I think that's important to look at. And so I don't think if you want to be a homeowner, you should be a homeowner, or it's necessary to be a homeowner. But I do think you should understand the value of real estate and not let it go or push it to the side, or invest when you can and make money from it, for sure.
So when you say in terms of buying or having your own properties, you know, some people talk about that in terms of flipping houses aspect. Do you do that? Or are you buying storefronts? Are you franchising? What does that look like as far as people who want to invest in other things instead of buying a house?
I think it depends on your goals, because there are some people who it depends on what it is that you do, you know, what perspective you're coming from. If you're a person who has different businesses where you buying a plaza could benefit you as an owner, and also you can make space for other business owners, then that would be the way to go. If you're a person who doesn't want to own this huge amount of land, but just would like to invest in real estate and make some money down the road, but not having to be a quote unquote flipper, you know, you could buy a condo and rent it out and wait for it to appreciate in value and make money off it by selling it. So there's, you know, it's just like the stock market in that you could do it more aggressively or you could do it more passively. It just depends on how you go into it and what your end game is.
Yeah, and I know that, as you know, Vicky just got her real estate license.
And what I tell her, I already told her, find me an investment property in Atlanta.
Come on now. And one of the things that she talked about is the challenge it was passing the exam. Like if someone was thinking about going into this, does college, is anything you could have learned from schooling prior to would have it kind of set you up to be able to help you with passing the exam at all?
No, when it comes to those exams, it's really more about how you think and how you study.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything in the world. I mean, this is a conversation that Ethan and I had as well, because he's working on passing the real estate inspector's license. And I was just telling him, I'm like, it really has to do with how you think. Like, I'm not a very litigious thinker. So for me, or I guess I am. So for me, when you ask me a question like that, I'm like, well, it could be this answer, but it also could be this answer. And I can argue you down about which one it could be. You know what I mean? But that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a special, and Vicky is that way too. Mm-hmm. And that's what I said to her as well. I was like, you really got to get out of your way when it comes to that and think about what they're looking for. And that really has to do with you looking at different forms of the question to understand what they're looking for, even though there could be 67 other answers. So I don't think it's a college preparation. I think it's just a mindset thinking that changes with when you start to say, what do they want to know? No matter what I may or may not know is true.
And let's get into I just talking about the training part of, even from a chef's perspective, how much training you have to have prior to, and what I guess the levels of education going from being a chef as well as a real estate agent. Is it prior educations that you had to have, or you could just take a test and now you're real estate, or I could take a test and now I'm a chef?
So, I mean, to be a chef, you don't have to take a test at all. Some people went into the industry and worked for years and they, worked their way up. And so that's one way, or you can go to school and then you can get in the mid-level and then you can work your way up from there. As far as real estate, each state has requirements. So you have to take a certain amount of credit hours and then you take an exam.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no prior education as far as college. You don't have to have those. I went to culinary school because I wanted to know the traditional French way of doing things, so that when people said certain words to me, I understood what it meant and I understood certain techniques. But that is a personal choice, not a requirement.
But so with being a chef, for those who are thinking about or haven't thought about becoming this, you can just say you're a chef, but without actually having the education. And whereas becoming a chef in a field where if you're working at a cordon bleu restaurant or something like that, then there's like difference in that.
Well, I mean, yes and no. So yes, you can say, everybody in the world is.
Now I'm over here dealing with it.
Oh, okay.
Just today. Something's happening today. Just everybody's off the hook.
The joy of live video.
Everyone's off the hook today.
Carter E.
Everybody, I'm worried about the smush her down.
And the fact that you pushed her with your arm is also.
But it did. Don't take care of me. I'm gonna yank her arm out. Yes, Lord.
Oh, Father.
What were we talking about? So education. So you were saying about calling someone a chef versus taking education out.
Yes, the only thing I would say about it, technically, it is not you. People on Instagram are models.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense, because you could just say it. When people, because I know I've had people say, yeah, I'm a chef, and then they didn't have the education, and you ask them questions, they don't know it. So the education,
it's not even just about the education. Do you have the skill? Because some people have done it for 20 years and therefore they earned the right to be called that.
Yeah. And it makes a difference. So, and that's one of those things, because you think about it, like I said, when real estate, there is an exam that you had to take.
Yeah.
You can't just walk around the side saying, I'm gonna sell this house I saw on the block. Like that's not how it works.
It same goes for motivational speakers or life coaches or any of that. If you seeing results, then
you could be self-proclaimed of anything. Well, I am president of Zamunda, okay?
Influence, all of that.
That's all
You
the
get
cake
these
baskets.
results, you get somebody, I about my business.
So, and I know we're going to be getting close to wrapping up, but what do you
Yes.
think in terms of like your overall life, in terms of quotes or mantras that keep you going? Because I know in this business, it can be tough. There are days where days are not like as they were
Always.
always, and especially when you're a business owner, like you don't have this ability of people think of a check, but you also can make your own strides. What is something that keeps you going, and what are some of the mantras that you say to yourself to keep you positive thinking?
I would say that, one thing, there's a couple things that my Pastor Keith Battle, says all the time, right? He says, don't major in the minors.
Mm.
That is something that I say all the time. And I try to remind myself, don't major in the minors, don't major in the minors, which, just means don't fret over this small stuff if the big picture is still, within your grasp. And so I try not to do that. In addition, the other thing he says is when you don't know what to do, make the next right decision.
Mm.
So if you don't know if you don't know whether to quit your job or stay at your job right now, what is your assignment for right now? And what is the right thing to do for today?
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep doing those things, then you'll end up where you're supposed to be. So I try to do that. I try to remember what is the right thing for me to do right now. Let me not focus on the small things that don't impact my biggest and broadest goal. And just keep putting one foot in front of the other. If you just keep going,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about continuing on. Like, just continue, just keep going. Like, yeah, I can't even tell you the amount of times I want to give up. And I say want and not wanted, because just earlier today I was ready to give up. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't want to make it seem like it's something that happens every once in a while. It's something that comes and knocks often. And you think about giving up, you think about throwing in the towel, you think about forget it all. I'm done with it all. I'm gonna go do this, and I know this is safe, and I can let it all go. And at the end of the day, then you say, like, just keep going. Keep pushing. You'll see me a lot of times when I post, I'll just say keep pushing, because the next day you'll wake up and you'll see some fruit of your labor, and you'll be like, yeah, okay. And when you see that fruit, then it gives you that juice to keep on going. And so I just put one foot in front of the other. I keep on pushing, and I just remember that these small things are a drop in the bucket compared to these huge things that, that my purpose is, that need to happen, that I came here to do.
So do you feel like coming from a corporate job and now doing what you're doing, are you living in your purpose?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't regret it one day.
Through all the challenges that come up and you're faced
Absolutely.
with, I know it has to be like one day from the next. You're like, okay, this is that, and it's going to happen. When you're faced with those kind of things, I know you say you could tell yourself you want to give up, but what do you tell yourself on the other side of, like, I'm never going to give up? How do you keep that? Because a lot of times going to small businesses, you don't have maybe the faith instilled in you. How do you keep telling yourself to push forward?
That's it. I just push forward. It ain't even nothing I tell myself. I don't give myself the option to quit ever. Because I know that all the things that I set out to do, every vision I see for myself, I can accomplish. And everything that I originally thought, one thing that I think that's important for people to do is keep a journal, is to write down their small successes, because we forget when we get in the space of our next achievement, the things that we've achieved. You know what I mean? Like I said, I wake up this morning like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of fighting against this. I'm tired of trying to win this. I'm tired of going this uphill battle. At the same time, I'm 6 years in from working on my own, and knowing that and being able to say 6 years ago, I didn't think this was possible, is what made me be able to say, well, I didn't feel like it, but get up. Because 6 years ago, you didn't even think you could do this. And you did this. So 6 years from now, the thing you think you can't do now is what you'll be sitting on in 6 years.
And like you said, you still been eating, so ain't your successes hasn't gotten you not a missed meals.
You see that?
But if you look back through your journey, what advice would you give to our, young entrepreneurs, people who have been doing it for a while that may be at that crossroad of deciding to make, a decision? What advice would you give them?
I would say get off the no new friends mantra and get you some new friends who are in whatever business you're interested in, because they will give you the juice that inspires you. They will give you the juice to keep going because they'll be in the same place as you. They'll understand what you're going through. They'll give you new motivation. They'll give you things, get you a mentor that you can trust, that inspires you, that feeds you, that makes you happy, feel juiced up about your business. Follow people who are doing what you're doing. And just remind yourself that if God gave you that vision, then he gave you the power to finish it. He gave you the power to get to it. It's a vision in your mind because it can be fruition in real life.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. And it's so true, because it's one of those things where, as those who don't know us know that we're the kind of friends that know the bodies are buried at. So we know the journey we've been through.
Hello.
But it is definitely one of those things that you just got to keep going. And it is true. And I know we used to always joke about not meeting new friends, but it does make a difference in terms of finding people in those spaces about their business who are successful, because you don't know what impact they can make into your life.
Right.
So that's so
and
true.
If nothing more, sometimes they just give you the juice. Like sometimes when you're feeling uninspired or you don't feel like creating something new, they've created something new and they're like, let me tell you about this new project. And you're like, ooh, now I feel like, then you feel like, getting back in the ring. You're like, ooh, yeah. My brother, Aaron, he does that. He's like, ooh, what you think it is? And I'm like, oh, that play looks nice. I'm like, oh, what we're going to do next. And that's what you get it from. That's sharing that same energy.
And we'll just speak to that in terms of like building your community around you. How important is that as well in terms of making sure that
it is extremely important. It is extremely important. You have to build a network of like-minded people. I don't care if you grew up with people. Quantity does not equal quality. That doesn't mean you don't have any friends that's welcome to, go on a journey with you. But when you find out some of them people ain't ready to move, you got to move. Unless you want to stay stagnant.
Yeah. And your relationships can also evolve in a different direction because
absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, it has been an amazing pleasure. Tell Ethan and Jamie Ethan and Asia, they own punishment.
I will definitely tell them that.
As well as this one that came busting in the door. But we thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on here and inspiring others. I know that your journey is still evolving, but I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of everything.
Thank you. I'm so proud of you too, my
love. Thank you. And pushing forward, despite all the challenges, especially within the past year, no one knew and no one could ever forecast this, but to come out on the other side of this, only but God. So I thank you for being here. I thank you so much.
Keep on pushing. It was my pleasure. Right. I love y'all.
Okay, bye. Love you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It has been such a great conversation, not only catching up, but to also learn of Chef Jamie G's journey and becoming and stepping out on faith and becoming a chef and real estate agent in the DMV area. So if you are looking to, check her business out, make sure you follow her on Chef Jamie G's website. And she has another Instagram page, Buy with Jamie, as well, Jamie G as well. You can follow that on her page. But if you know someone who inspires you or you are an inspiration to others and you want to share your story, please email us at inspire at Gmail, inspiredbyanonymous@gmail.com. Follow us on all social media platforms at Inspired by Anonymous. It's right at the bottom. The count is put down at the bottom there. Follow us there so you can be up to date on all our great interviews. We're live on Facebook here every Thursday. So please join us and share the page and share. And if you didn't see earlier, Kiana put at the bottom about supporting the show. If you want to support the show, please do so by Cash App and Kiana Tennant on Cash App. We thank you so much. Everything we get from you all goes right back into the show. So we thank you all for supporting us. And until then, we inspire together.